And you're good to go.
I'd like to welcome everyone to the Emmaus Borough Council meeting. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, I am noting for the record that Councilman Christopher Frayne is not here this evening. At this time, we'll have personal appeals. If anyone has a personal appeal, Shane will at this time unmute all our guests. And if anybody has an appeal, please speak up, state your name, where you're from, and you have 5 minutes for your appeal.
All right, hold on just a second. I'm going to unmute. Unmute all. Okay, I've unmuted everyone.
All right, so would anyone like to make a public appeal? Anybody speak up? None?
Shane, this is Nick Tranguch. I just want to confirm we're on the agenda for Emmaus BDC, that what was sent earlier. It's not part of the public appeal, correct?
It's under communications now.
All right, great. Thank you.
Yep.
Who was that talking? I didn't.
That was Nick Tranguch. If you don't mind, when we get to communications, I'd
Oh, I
like
see
him to
Nick.
be able
Hi,
to-
Nick.
I'd like him to be able to
A lot
speak.
of squares here. I had to find you.
So if you
So
don't mind,
nobody else with a public appeal? All right, Shane, you may mute him.
all right, give me just a second. Let me unmute council. Mute the mayor, mute the attorney. All right, everybody on council good? Shanna, you're unmuted. You're good.
I think Terry is still muted. There you go.
Thank you.
Okay.
I think we're good. All right, this time we have community minute. Does any council member have a community minute to bring forward?
I do.
All right.
So I just wanted to say that I was at the June 14th Peace March. I want to thank Chief Palmer, who was there, did a great job making sure everybody was safe. The organizers established clear expectations and guidelines. And there were also people who participated who stayed after to make sure everything was cleaned up. And they actually didn't find anything to pick up. So everybody was very clean and orderly. And so all in all, it was pretty safe and positive event. So I appreciate everybody who helped ensure that it was.
Thank you for that report. Anybody else with the community minute? All right, hearing none. We have no special presentation tonight. We have council meeting minutes of May 18th of this year to approve. Would somebody like to make a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll make that motion, Mr. President.
Councilman Balliet, seconded by Councilman Hart. Any corrections on the minutes or additions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. There are 6 ayes. We have no decisions on bids this evening. I have 3 communications. We received information or a couple letters from our insurance carrier, and because of COVID-19, we received a credit of $696. So that's nice to hear. We also received a letter of resignation from our ambulance chief, Jeffrey Hoffman, and that was received on June 19th, and it was effective on June 9th, or I'm sorry, 9th, not 19th. So we have a letter of resignation from our chief. Do we make a motion to accept it now, Shane?
Yes, please.
All right, do we have a motion to accept? Councilman Anders, seconded by
I'll second.
Councilwoman Baumgartner. Any discussion? I just want to say I appreciate his service in the borough here. He's been here many years and has added to this ambulance corps over the years, and I appreciate what he contributed. So with that being said, all those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say no. There are 6 ayes.
Mr. President,
Yes.
I have a question about the COVID vehicle insurance premium.
Okay.
I apologize for going back. My wife and I received a check also from our insurance carrier. I had asked Mr. Pepe, mine was like $98, something like that. Any sense, is this an appropriate amount, Shane, to receive?
Yeah. So they do it based on the fleet, and they ask exactly what vehicles haven't been driven at all. If
Yeah.
a vehicle has been driven, even once, they're not going to discount it because it's a fleet insurance. So we gave them the inventory of what hasn't been driven at all. Obviously, we can't say that no ambulances were driven or
Right.
So bottom line is, when you look at the entire fleet, the majority of everything was driven, at least a little bit.
Okay.
So that's why it wasn't as high as what I think it should have been. But the reasoning was because if you drove it at all, we can't say that we didn't drive truck number 5 as much as we truck number 3, but we could say that we haven't touched truck number 5, truck number 6.
I was highly suspicious. You gave it a critical eye. I just need to ask.
Yeah. So I think they were trying to just shut me up, and that's why they gave me a nominal amount. It didn't work, but okay, whatever. Moving on.
Thank you.
All right. We will address the ambulance chief under safety committee later on. All right, council. Then we received a letter from Nick Tranguch with regards to tables on the triangle, and that would be for the business of David's Italian Market, and they would be responsible from open to close of cleaning it in between parties using it. And
So Mr. President, I would like, if we could, Mr. Tranguch, if he could speak on behalf of that.
yeah, sure. I mean, I don't see anybody against it, but sure.
All right.
Go ahead.
All right.
Mr. Tranguch, it's all yours.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for the time tonight. So I'm here on behalf of the Emmaus Business Development Committee, of which I co-chair. And we've been, in close communication with some of the businesses and working to, help them reopen. And again, want to express our thanks for the borough and the council's support in the recovery guidelines that were released a couple weeks ago. A lot of businesses have received those positively, and so those have been well received. I wanted to, talk about the potential for utilizing the public space in the triangle to further ease or provide support in those businesses that surround the triangle. Specifically, we've been able to secure the support of David's Italian Market to actually take responsibility for up to 4 picnic tables in that public space if the borough were, permissive of putting those tables there. So that's our ask for tonight. Is it possible to have tables placed in that public triangle area, that David's would take responsibility for if needed? The other conversation potentially is that it's no different than Community Park, Furnace Dam, et cetera, which already have those picnic tables in place. And so if there's picnic tables in a community area such as Triangle Park, perhaps they are just, community space and open for public use. So appreciate the support and any direction you can give that we can take back to our business community.
Well, Mr. Tranguch, I read the 2-page letter, and it was very, explained everything very well. The question and answer was very helpful. I believe that if they put a sign there saying that during the business hours that they listed on your letter, that would be exclusively for them. And then after those hours, if anyone in the community wants to use it, I wouldn't have a problem with that. But when he starts the business day, then he has to go out there and clean them and get it ready for the day. Does anybody else feel different about that? And we're looking for a motion for that now, Shane?
Well, so I do feel different about it, to be honest with you.
Okay.
And here's what I'm going to say is we're going to take borough-owned picnic tables and put them on a borough-owned park. And because a restaurant that is going to benefit exclusively is going to maintain those tables, he has the sole right to those tables. I'm not sure that's going to sit very well with anybody else. I
Well-
get it. Here's what I'm going to tell you is I would not treat them like they were any other community park picnic table, because what the guidelines say is, for tables that are outdoors, the restaurants that are doing it are responsible to maintain them and sanitize them. And that's why we would want somebody to be in charge of doing that. For me to take, I'll call Triangle Park sacred ground, because that's how people in this town treat it. And throw a bunch of picnic tables out there for the exclusive use of one business. I think that you're going to have as much pushback as you are positivity out of that. So I want you to have that conversation at least among yourselves, because I just think that I can see the other side of that. I get it. I appreciate it. I absolutely respect it. But I think that you need to have that conversation among the six of you of what that might look like to other businesses.
Let me throw this out as a compromise. Maybe not 4 tables, maybe we do 2 or 3. And also, I would put the limit on it as only until we turn green, and when we turn green, the tables disappear. Now, that could be 2 weeks, or it could be 4 months, or could be 8 weeks. I'm hoping it's 2 weeks, because there's only 13 counties out of the 67 that are yellow yet, and we're one of them. So those would be my thoughts. That we would do maybe only 2 or 3 tables, and once it turns green, those tables disappear.
Yeah, and if I may address the potential pushback as well, certainly understand Shane's points. This wasn't without our outreach. So as a business development committee, we've made outreach to all of the restaurants that surround that Triangle Park. And David's Italian Market was the only one to raise their hand and say that they would be willing to take responsibility for those tables. And, if those tables are there and there's nobody taking responsibility, then, it was more fearful that we would not get, borough's approval to put tables there if we didn't have at least somebody taking responsibility. But if David's Market is going to take that responsibility, then, and no other business that we've made outreach to has said, yes, we want to do the same, then we don't feel like it, in fairness to David's, that they should, share those tables that they're cleaning, on behalf of another business. But again, then if it's not, if we just put them out there like any other community park though, and don't put that responsibility for cleaning them, then it's open, and the farmer's market on Sunday can use them, and other businesses can, tell their takeout patrons to go use them. There's really 2 sides, I think, to go with this. Either David's takes responsibility and they get to put some sort of exclusivity on it during their business hours, or nobody takes responsibility and then they're open, or we don't do it at all. And so that's kind of where I think we land, just for conversation purposes.
All right, well, the one thing I did read in the letter that did raise my eyebrows is the fact that there's more seating with these picnic tables than they actually have inside their business. So, and it essentially is expanding their business. And I don't know if we should take that role. That's the only thing that kind of made me think maybe we shouldn't do this. But that's why I'm not opposed to maybe doing like two picnic tables, and they're responsible. And once it goes green, I'm not able to make the motion. So guys, you guys need to speak up how you feel, or if you want to make a motion, you can make a motion.
So, Mr. President, may I?
Councilwoman McManaman, go ahead.
So when this has been discussed, it started also at Health, Sanitation, and Codes. I mean, we went around about this as far as the usage of it. I think we're all looking at this, at least on the CRD side, that could be a pilot. I mean, this is the perfect timing in order to see what it would be like to have permanent tables eventually on our triangle. Not big one, not huge, but if David's and any community member, I mean, I don't go around Emmaus without cleaning up Emmaus. So we're not going to have, I don't think, people taking advantage, or, they're not going to, they're going to want to have a clean environment. I can see us having 3 tables out there. I can also see David wanting, regardless of if it's, they're out there 7 days a week. David, we know him as a business owner. he is going to want to take care of those tables. He's going to take ownership to them. So I'd like to see us move ahead with this, with the understanding that that David, it's not strictly for David's Deli. We know the community is going to use it, but exactly like you're saying, it is expanding his area. And I do think that he is going to want to be participatory in cleaning that space and making sure within these next 2 weeks that we're following.
Either he's going to be responsible for cleaning it or he's not. There's not going to
But
be
that's what
anything in
I'm saying.
between.
And that's what I'm saying. I think that, I know, Nick, you have probably talked to David as far as if he's either doing it or he's not. It's either his tables or it's not. I don't know that that is actually something that we could move ahead on just to have it just for him, because the community is going to use it.
Yeah.
What about our 4 other council members?
I had a question. As far as Nick, maybe you can answer this. He usually has 2 or 3 people working there, and if it's a busy lunch hour and people are coming out, typically any of the restaurants that are right now open and has outdoor seating, they'll go out and they have somebody dedicated to be able to clean the tables after someone's done. Where would he have enough time or personnel to actually be able to do that if you have a busy lunch hour, if he were just doing it himself? And I guess that's kind of my fear, that, you know, it may not get to, and then does that open A, the borough up to anything, or B, him, if we have that saying it's for him? Now, if the benches are there, if the picnic tables are there like they are in any park, then I guess you have a different story, because anybody can just sit at any table whenever, however. You know, if they go to community, or if they go down to, even there's a picnic table down at Williams Kiwanis, like underneath underneath the, you know, by the restrooms there. So the difference there is what I'm kind of a little concerned with is that commitment has got to be pretty strong, and when he's busy. So I don't know if you thought of that, or if that, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. In my conversations with him, he does feel he has the staff to support it. You know, again, though, I would lean towards he was taking responsibility in an effort to, you know, support the effort to expand outdoor dining in the Triangle in the absence of any other business kind of raising their hand in that support. So I think the better approach to, you know, some of the conversation points I've heard potentially is that, you know, we use this as Terry said, as a pilot, and because it's going to be hard for David's to police it, especially on a Sunday when the farmer's market's packed and you've got 100 people surrounding those tables. You know, it's going to be a hard environment, even with a sign on there that may not sit well with people, that those are reserved for David. So if they're open up from a community standpoint, being that it's communal space, you know, potentially that's a better approach. And then to Terry's point, David's can still take the opportunity as a business owner who's benefiting from it to, you know, provide, you know, the cleanup as often as they can.
So you're saying anybody can use it all during the day and not exclusive for his business hours, only his business hours, and then after that, anyone can go there? That's what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, that would be an option as well. I think, you know, if you're given either or, I think the path of least resistance is to leave it open to everybody. So that avoids Shane's concerns about exclusivity. It avoids some concerns around, you know, whose responsibility is it. It doesn't put the borough in any additional risk based on, you know, the same tables exist already in an open park, you know, so there's no additional risk as far as I can see it.
Well, I can tell you right now that I am not in favor of keeping picnic tables on the Triangle. So if you're looking at this as a pilot, I'm not in favor of that at all. We use the Triangle for too many events, and I do not want to have our public works have to move those picnic tables every time we have a concert there or something. So I am not in favor of that.
Yeah, I don't think that's the discussion.
That's not the discussion. And there are a couple.
Well, you mentioned about a pilot program
No, I
for
understand
keeping,
that, but not as it appears now. Not with picnic tables that are this large and in the center of that's not what we're talking about.
well,
So I do want
you
to
mentioned
use
the
that.
pilot program. So
Yeah. I do it's the theory of having tables there. But I do want to make you feel more comfortable with my language around pilot.
All right, well,
Not
we haven't heard from 3 council members. There's 6 here tonight. I do want to tell you that I'm not in favor unless they're removed when our county goes green, those tables are removed. That's the only way I'll support
Well, that's
it.
the intention.
That's the intention.
That's the
I'm sorry.
intention.
So Chad, Shane,
I had some
John,
questions. I had some questions.
when you're muted, do you want to be muted, John?
I had
He
questions.
muted
Can you hear
himself.
We can hear you, Shanna.
Okay, thank you. So I had a question similar to Roy in terms of, I know I've called them before and they've been busy and it was hard for them to address my call and they had to call back. So, on one hand, just as he said, how well will they keep up with maintaining the tables, but also on the flip side, if they find that maintaining is not cost effective, like it costs them more to have somebody out there trying to take care of the tables, and yet people who are not necessarily their customers who might be using them and they're still, you know what I mean? Like the effort's not necessarily worth it for them. What if they say, we don't want to do this anymore? Like what comes of that? Have they thought that through?
I have.
Helpful.
Yeah, we pull the tables.
Yeah.
If somebody else isn't maintaining them, then we pull them out of the park. But
Okay.
I mean, the guidelines from the state are very clear. If we're putting tables in that park for restaurants to use, somebody needs to be maintaining them, and it's not going to be my DPW guys.
Right.
The other question I had was, you talked about talking to the Triangle businesses, but I know there are other restaurants that don't have outdoor seating options, like the Thai restaurant, for example. So were any considerations given to those, or what might be solutions for them if they're not interested in that idea? Because that might be a concern as well, that there's an unfair advantage for offering one business that option and
Sure.
not others.
No, I appreciate that. And definitely conversations have been had, specifically with the Thai restaurant. And we hope that they will be approaching Borough with a similar ask relative to their own property, and what they might potentially be able to do, on the street or using parking spaces, et cetera. So they have a different, solution. When we approached them about the Triangle, their concern was, distance from the Triangle, being able to serve those tables, et cetera. So we understood that, but they certainly had some thoughts on what they could do.
Okay.
And they were instructed to reach out to Borough separately. To Shane's point and to your question regarding, the busyness and what if, these things aren't being met, the full expectation has been set with David's that it's if this is approved, they essentially own the responsibility for these tables being clean and kept up with CDC and Governor Wolf's guidelines. And that, again, it's not for an extended period of time. The hope is that we're looking at a 2, max 3 to 4 week period here before we go green. And I do think that, knowing the relationship that we've had with David's as a BDC committee and some of the other work that he's done around the other events in the Triangle, he has been a responsible business owner when committed to doing things.
If I could say something, first of all, if you want my picture back on, Shane, you're going to have to, it says that you've blocked me. I don't know.
Yeah, no, we're not putting your video back on.
Okay.
You're in and out about every 10 seconds.
I have no idea why it's doing that. Anyway.
It's a user error, but that's okay.
Yeah, probably. The real question here, and the normal way we would do this, is to lease have some very short-term lease that would assign the responsibilities and the duties that are involved and when they're going to be removed. That's the correct way to do it. If you don't wish to do it that way and just want to throw it open, I mean, I'm not going to stop you, but that's the correct way.
Yeah, I don't think we need to go down that road. By the time we do up a lease, we'll be long past the yellow phase.
I agree.
We're just looking for somebody to maintain the tables so that people that are getting food at restaurants can go sit down during the time that they're not allowed to sit inside of a restaurant.
All right, somebody ready to make a motion? We spent a lot of time on this.
I would like to make a motion that 3 picnic table. Oh, John, Mr. Hart.
No, it was a comment.
We'll go to discussion after.
Okay.
So I'd like,
After the vote, go ahead.
Well, you can make a motion and your discussion can be during the comment.
so I'd like to make a motion for 3 picnic tables from the borough be placed on Triangle Park. They will be maintained by David's Deli, and it will be through until the green fades.
There's a motion by Councilwoman McManaman. Is there a second? Councilman Hart, discussion. Councilman Anders.
I would ask Terry to possibly amend that motion that the picnic tables are available to the public and David's customers if that were to be part of her motion.
So amended.
All right,
Aye.
and you, there's a
Aye.
second?
I second the amendment.
All right, any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say no. There are 6 ayes. Took a while, but we got there.
Appreciate everybody's time.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Translate.
Hopefully we go green in 2 weeks and then it's a non-issue.
Agreed.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Does anyone else have a communication to bring forward? Those are the 3 that are on our agenda. Hearing none, we have no borough engineers report, solicitors report.
Very briefly, the Verizon people have gotten back with historical data that we could put into the ordinance, and we are working on that at this current time. Should be done in the next week or 2. That's all I have, Mr. President.
Thank you. Unfinished business part 1, we have nothing. New business, we have nothing. Unfinished
Hey,
business
Just
part.
before we go any further, I just want you to know that I think we're starting to get invaded in this meeting, so we're gonna keep security tight on it. Okay?
Okay. Well, you're our security.
No, I'm just letting you know that if we keep seeing those numbers come in, we may want to talk about having a personal appeals part 2.
Okay.
All right?
So unfinished business part 2, we do also do not have anything. Items not on the agenda. Does anybody have anything to bring forward? Hearing none. Mayor's report. Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. President. With everything that's taken place over the last few weeks, I have issued the following. This is Proclamation 2020-490, titled Anti-Discrimination. The Borough of UMass is a growing, diverse, and multicultural community. The borough endeavors to treat all groups and individuals in our community with dignity and respect. Whereas democracy cannot exist without protecting their citizens from persecution and discrimination because of race, religion, national origin, gender, or sexual orientation, and the basis of democracy is the right of all people to dignity and self-respect. And whereas welcoming and embracing diversity is essential for a decent and democratic society. And whereas all people have the right to live free from bigotry, violence, and fear in the workplace, the family, places of worship, school, and on the streets of the borough of UMass. And whereas the mayor, borough council, and all departments work hard to ensure that all members of our community are protected, treated properly and with respect, and are served with the utmost professionalism and dignity. And whereas the UMass Police Department is a highly trained, accredited police department held to the highest standards by their members as well as our community. And whereas the UMass Police Department, through the Pennsylvania Law Enforcement Accreditation Commission, has enacted and enforces and actively reforms its policies to ensure the respectful, fair, and equal treatment of all members of our community. And whereas now, therefore, I, Leanne Gilbert, Mayor, Borough of UMass, Lehigh County, Pennsylvania, hereby proclaim that the Borough of UMass stands against racism, discrimination in all forms, and denounces and will not tolerate any acts of racism, intolerance, and unlawful discrimination of any kind. We stand with all those who raise their voices to condemn inequality. We encourage everyone to listen, learn, respect, and stand alongside those who are standing for equality for everyone within our community, our nation, and our world. Be it further proclaimed that we stand together against violence of all persons and vow to hold the members of our community as well as our government accountable for any such acts of violence, discrimination, or racism. Be it further proclaimed that we encourage all residents to treat each other with respect and kindness in partnership and inclusion of all members of our community, embracing and welcoming citizens of all diverse backgrounds, as it is a critical part fostering of love, a vibrant and successful community. The Borough of UMass is committed to ensuring the right of every citizen to enjoy life, to experience equality, and to live free from discrimination in a more inclusive and just society. Done this 15th day of June, 2020 at Emmaus, Lehigh County, Pennsylvania. I report progress.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Committee reports, Public Works Committee Chairman Anders.
Yes, I have one item for official action. We received a letter from the Geological Survey to place a stream gauge at the Lieber Creek. So I would like to put that in the form of a motion to permit the stream gauge, which will record water levels and the stream, how fast it's going, and be there permanently. So I'd like to put that in the form of a motion to.
There's a motion from Councilman Anders. It's for Liberts Creek. Is there a second?
I'll second that, Mr. President.
Councilman Balliet, any discussion?
Mr. President, I've read it, reviewed it. We're okay with it. I have no problems.
Thank you. And also, this will be permanent. This will be a benefit. Well, they'll get some history and some knowledge on the flows. So this will benefit our little neck of the stream there down by the community park.
That was a crick.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed say no. There are 6 ayes.
So a few updates. Our full-time staff has returned to work. So they are back and they are very busy. They are working on several things around town. They are working on trimming the trees. They have placed the Heroes banners. I believe they are all up now. And they will be doing many other work. Other updates that I have is the compost will be open on Saturdays. Now we have reopened it, and the electronics recycling has also resumed over at the garage. Besides that, I will report progress unless anyone has any questions.
Any questions for Roy? Thank you. Health, Sanitation, and Codes Committee, Chairman Balliet.
Thank you, Mr. President. We don't have anything for official action tonight. We do have a couple talking points. I'd like to thank Shane, Jim, Ryan, and Gary for the business recovery and reopening plan that they put together very quickly to react to get some of our local businesses open. And as we were going through some other stuff and some other discussions came up, is it's kind of just a reminder for people that swimming pools over portable, movable swimming pools, anything over the depth of 3 feet will need a permit and whatnot. And just trying to save people the, getting that letter in the mail that they're violating some state code. It's not a borough code; it's actually a state law. With that, I'll report progress. And our next meeting is 6/24 at 4:30 via Zoom.
Thank you. Parks and Recreation, Chairwoman Baumgartner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have nothing for official action. I will say that you have the committee notes there. I think everything you guys are familiar with, but the bathrooms, I just want to say we decided that bathrooms at the parks will remain closed until we reach the green phase. Other than that, we discussed the studies, the junior councilman's project, and other various topics. So if anyone has questions, I can address those. I don't know if there are any questions about any of those topics.
Any questions for Ms. Baumgartner? Hearing none. Progress?
Okay. Yeah, so I'll report progress. Our next meeting will be July 7th at 4:45 p.m.
Thank you. Public Safety Committee, Chairman Hart.
Thank you, Mr. President. We had a meeting on June 8th and spent a good part of the meeting talking about the handicap parking ordinance, which we're still working on. Recall that this permits us to reserve a specific handicap space for a particular individual with additional fees, etc. It caused us to do a survey, an inventory of all of our spaces, and we were surprised that there were as many as there were, and we have them in a database now. So we'll be moving forward with that probably at the next council meeting. More importantly, we had a discussion apropos to what's going on, not just in the United States, but throughout the world, both on racism and police brutality, which precipitated a discussion among the committee and those present to ask ourselves, well, where does Emmaus fall in this spectrum of statuses? We certainly know that we're not in Minneapolis. We certainly know we're not in Atlanta. As a matter of fact, we knew that we are something much more special. And it occurred to us that we weren't letting the public know about that. A couple weeks ago, we had Police Week awards, and the mayor made a very eloquent, as she always does, presentation and discussion, and I was asked to comment, and I said that the thing that I mentioned out of my mouth secondly when asked about the borough in which I live, it's the police department, and how proud I am of it and how they help the community. They don't police the community, they serve the community and help the community. And I mentioned in my 41 years, my family and I always felt safe. We agreed that we needed to be a bit more proactive in touting what we have done and what Chief Palmer has put in place. I have to admit, I learned a lot of things that I wasn't aware of. The mayor today read a very, very eloquent and inclusive proclamation that just is wonderful in expressing, at least from my perspective, where we stand as a borough. We've asked the chief to be with us this evening to talk about some of the things. One of the issues that keeps coming up in other municipalities is the demands for the 8 can't wait measures. Well, it turns out that we not only do all of those, that we've become accredited. We're one of the few communities that has become accredited in all of those areas. So it's simply not taking and putting together a policy and putting it on the shelf, but rather our police department, our chief, took the initiative to make sure that we were accredited in those areas, and things like no chokeholds and on and on and on. I won't get into his area, but I believe, and we believe as a committee, that it's necessary to talk about what Emmaus is like and the fact that we are, in my opinion, a gold standard out there, and certainly don't approach the issues that some of the other cities throughout the United States are encountering right now. And I'll shut up there and see if Terry has anything to say before I call on the chief.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. I'd just like to say thank you, Chief Palmer, for your candor during a very difficult few weeks of conversations and the community asking difficult questions that you've answered and that you're going to be able to share with us tonight. I do have the benefit of being out with the police department and mayor for many events when you all are serving dinner to the high rise and when you're at public events. And I just want to say, as part of the Public Safety Committee, I'm very proud of you, Chief, and our officers and everything that we do in Emmaus. And I appreciate your presence the last couple of weekends in the public and letting them see that you are part of the solution and part of the conversation. So thank you, Chief.
Chief, the floor is yours.
He's muted.
Okay, thank you for that. And I'm glad you brought up about candor, because I'm going to be very candid as to why we are where we are. The mayor's proclamation, Mr. Hart and Ms. McManaman's words are very eloquent. I'm going to try to be as eloquent, but I need to start off as to what really got us here. And what got us here is the act of a crazed piece of human garbage wearing a police uniform in Minneapolis and committed a murder on video and killed George Floyd and literally lit the world on fire. And now the career that I've been working in for 33 years has to answer. And I have answers because Mr. Hart, you mentioned about the 8 can't wait. Well, I've gotten 5 or 6 emails over the last couple of weeks from 8 Can't Wait and other so-called organizations that are demanding police reform. Well, I got to tell you, it's kind of comical because those organizations are literally 14 years late to the table. We've been accredited for 14 years, since 2006, through the Pennsylvania Law Enforcement Accreditation Commission. There's 140 standards that we adhere to, with another 100 subsections of those 140 standards. There's 300 agencies in Pennsylvania that have applied since 2001, and only 120 are currently accredited. And we were one of them. We got accredited 14 years ago. So this narrative of police reform and the 8 can't wait is kind of laughable to me because of where we're at and the standards that we've set as a department. So let me talk about each of the 8 can't wait so-called reform demands that they're making. Ban chokeholds and strangleholds, require de-escalation, require warning before shooting, require exhaust all alternatives before shooting, duty to intervene, banning shooting at moving vehicles, a use of force continuum, and requiring comprehensive reporting. Okay, chokeholds. The Emmaus Police Department, I don't want to give up our whole playbook. I don't want to give up our whole rule book to people that could possibly use that against us, that information against us. But our policy as it pertains to chokeholds, anything that may be used as a weapon of last resort, including neck restraints, is authorized if and only if the officer has exhausted all other or has no other means available. Okay, so that means that there's no other escape, no other defensive tactics measure, can't get to your firearm. Yes, you could use a chokehold or a stranglehold. Does that not make sense to save your own life or the life of somebody else? Okay, so there's exceptions to every rule. So just saying banning chokeholds doesn't cut it. They're banned except as a last resort. Okay, requiring de-escalation, all right, plays in hand with our use of force continuum. This is another thing. Our use of force continuum was copyrighted in 1982 and updated in 2005. You can Google use of force, police use of force continuum. It's a chart. You take the suspects or resistors' actions and you go across in the graph and it shows you what is reasonable force that's likely to get the person to comply and effectively make the arrest. If you go too far, it's deemed excessive. Okay, they're out there, they're on Google. I'm not going to talk specifically about ours because again, that's giving up our playbook. But as far as de-escalation, the first thing on the use of force continuum is just officer presence, the presence of the uniform and the badge, verbal persuasion, advice, and warning individuals. That's all part of de-escalation. And back in the day when I first started 33 years ago, they tell you, you know, when you're having an issue with somebody, establish a rapport. And then it moved on to formal training and it was called verbal judo. And now it's called de-escalation. It's the same stuff. It's been around for years. Okay, number 3, require warning before shooting. Our policy states, when feasible, a police officer shall give verbal directions and identify himself as a police officer prior to using any deadly force. Number 4, back to requiring exhaust any all alternatives before shooting. It goes back to the use of force continuum. Okay, not to give up the playbook, but lethal force is number 7 on our use of force continuum. Not going to get into, okay, I gave up number 1, right? Uniform, officer presence, some de-escalation through verbal direction, and then number 7 would be deadly force. So you got multiple steps in between there. We're also, you know, in our policy is Pennsylvania Title 18, Section 508. Justified in the use of force necessary to effect an arrest and defend himself or others from bodily harm, making the arrest. And that's what we're governed by. It's state law. Okay, duty to intervene when people are using excessive force. The failure to comply with orders, failing to supervise, failing to take action concerning illegal activity. What was happening in Minneapolis was murder on camera by a citizen, by, like I said, a piece of human garbage in a police uniform. That is an illegal act, and we have a duty to intervene. Shooting at moving vehicles. Our policy goes a step further. Shooting at or from moving vehicles. Only permitted as a last resort when the actor, by using the vehicle or other means poses an imminent danger of death or serious bodily injury to the police officer or others. Again, an exception to the rules. Okay, it's not completely outlawed, but it's there as a last resort. Some of the considerations that we have to take into effect before shooting at or from a moving vehicle is the difficulty in actually doing that act. Also, the population density, possibility of harming a bystander from ricochet bullets, hitting unintended targets. Requirement of a use of force continuum. Again, copyrighted 1982, updated in 2005. Here we are, 2020, and people are demanding that we have a use of force continuum. Again, I find it laughable. And last but not least is the reporting of use of force. We have what we call response to resistance report. Okay, excuse me. Can you mute me? Okay, excuse me. I'm not used to talking so much. So our response to resistance report, okay, it's not called use of force, it's response to resistance. The actor, the person that we are arresting dictates our action. Okay, we don't go into a situation saying this is what the amount of force I'm going to use. Our force, we play off the resistance. So it's called a response to resistance report. It's done by the officer immediately after the incident and prior to the end of his shift. It's reviewed by the supervisor to include any type of video, radio transmission, any kind of evidence involved in that case and the use of force. And then it's submitted to the Office of the Chief of Police and I review it. In 2020, to date, we've written 11 use of force reports. They range from pointing a firearm, that's considered a response to resistance. The officer had to take his gun out, point it at somebody, and that triggers a use of force report. We have physical, just physical restraint. It was completed actually 3 separate reports by 3 officers who were on the call. And it involved having to apply a hobble restraint, which basically is very large handcuffs that go around somebody's ankle to hobble their feet because of, again, because of their actions. Okay, 3 officers involved, each one does a response to resistance report. These reports, they have whether the suspect or officers were injured. In that instance, 1 officer reported a scratch, no injuries to the actor. Okay, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 other physical force, wrestling to the ground, administering an arm lock, applying restraints provided by the Emmaus Ambulance Corps. We didn't use handcuffs. It was a mental health situation. We used the ambulance restraint. Here's one where we used the taser on a fleeing suspect and the officer missed, but he still had to do a response to resistance report. No injuries, and the suspect was chased down, taken into custody without further incident. And we had another person who was tased with no injuries. 2019, we filed 12 response to resistance, kind of the same, along the same lines. Here's one, taser pointed at somebody. Pointed at somebody, and you know, everybody seen the videos. Don't tase me, don't tase me. That's what the guy said. Don't tase me. Officer took him into custody. Physical force. No injury from the use of force, but we documented injuries to the suspect because he was out of control and pounding his own head on the partition in the patrol car. Gets documented. Here's one that was a hit and run. Firearm used to order the suspect out of the vehicle. He took off running. We tased him, and then we had to use physical force. So you have firearm, pointing, taser deployment, physical force, no injuries to the suspect or the officer. Physical force. No injury to the officer. Suspect had a scraped knee. Here we have one, firearm drawn, threat of canine, no injury. So just getting the dog out, having the presence of the dog while making an arrest triggers a response to resistance report.
Chief, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I'm going to, present it to council. Given the plethora of examples that you've given us, I'll speak for myself. I don't have any feeling whatsoever that our department, your department, is not responding appropriately, and that there is appropriate, not just appropriate policies in place, but our men and women are adhering to those policies. The more important acid test is I am unaware of complaints from the public that are being received throughout the United States recently and previously about our police force. Unless I've been hidden from them, I believe we've done an outstanding job. So let me just, for a moment, I apologize for interrupting you, but open it up to council to see if they need more examples, explanations of what you've put in place. Yes, sir.
Well, I'm done with the use of force, but I would just like to finish maybe with
I was going to come back to
my
you.
thoughts on some of the, because like I said, I think some of you might be enjoying this because I'm kind of like reserved and quiet in some of the meetings, but I'm fired up because this is my career for 33 years, and the world's on fire, and we're being scrutinized, and I know a lot of my colleagues, a lot of my fellow officers feel the same way. So based on touching on some of the things in the mayor's proclamation with bias. Okay, so our mission of the police department is to be a leader in providing total quality service to all our residents, as well as those who visit and work in our community. This is right out of our policy manual on bias-based policing. We will enforce the laws and ordinances of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and the Borough of Emmaus with complete fairness and equity. The purpose of this policy is to emphasize the department's commitment to fair and equitable treatment of all people with bias towards none, while providing police services and enforcing the law. It shall be the policy of the Emmaus Police Department that bias-based policing is prohibited in any form. All persons having contact with members of this department shall be treated in a nonpartisan, fair, equitable, and objective manner in accordance with law and without consideration of the race, color, national origin, or other individual characteristics or distinctions as defined in this general order. Our training on this, in-house and initial training on this general order and bias-based policing issues shall be provided at least once every 3 years for all officers. Initial training shall be conducted by providing and reviewing with all officers a copy of this general order. Officers must be able to articulate specific facts and inferences drawn from the totality of the circumstances that establish reasonable suspicion or probable cause to take any enforcement actions. Officers shall take equivalent enforcement actions and provide equivalent services to all persons in the same or similar circumstances. Complaints, we have that taken care of. Any person may file a complaint with the department if they feel they have been stopped or searched based on racial, ethnic, or general-based profiling, and no person shall be discouraged, intimidated, or coerced from filing such a complaint or discriminated against because they have filed such a complaint. Officers who witness or are aware of instances of bias-based policing shall report the incident to their supervisor. Chief of his police or his designee on an annual basis review data related to the department's compliance. January 31st of this year, bias-based policing annual review. A review was undertaken of traffic citations and warnings issued in 2019. Of the citations and warnings issued, 87% were issued to whites, 12% to blacks, less than 1% to Indian, less than 1% to Asians. Also, 73.3% were issued to non-Hispanics, and 26% were issued to Hispanics. And this is generally in line with the population of Emmaus by race according to the 2010 census, which puts our population at 90% white. And I'll if you'll humor me with our oath of office that all of our officers are required to take. Issued by the mayor, sworn in at usually at council meetings, and this is something that our guys take wholeheartedly. And the fact that our oath of office and our badges are tarnished by what happened in Minneapolis is just total demoralizing. So we subscribe and take an oath to swear or affirm to support, obey, and defend the Constitution of the United States, constitutional laws of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and ordinances of the Borough of Emmaus with fidelity. The oath shall also acknowledge that members will uphold, obey, and enforce the law without consideration to a person's race, color, sex, religious creed, sexual orientation, age, national origin, ancestry, handicap, or disability. All personnel will receive ethics training at a minimum biannually. So, speaking from my personal experience, 19 years old, joined the U.S. Army, and took an oath of office, and I've lived under an oath of office ever since. So I'm sorry for getting up on my high horse and getting fired up over what's going on, but I think 4 years ago, when you made me the chief, that's what you asked for. You asked for honesty, you asked for integrity and openness, and I'm done.
Chief, thank you. Thank you for your comments, your candor, and it's what we expected. And what I heard has only strengthened my feeling about the police force. And it is a shame that you are being painted with the brush of, as a profession, based on what's happening in other cities, because we don't have that going on in Emmaus. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't look at it, which is what we're doing, and touting, to use Councilwoman McManus' word, touting what we are doing, so that people understand that, is the way I would put it. If I'm a black man driving through Emmaus and I get pulled over, the first and only thing I'm going to think about is how fast I was going. I think that's our standard. Certainly isn't the standard of other communities. Other council people that like to make comments or questions for the chief?
Well, I'm just going to say, 4 or 6 weeks ago, the whole country was saying first responders and healthcare workers were heroes, and you saw it everywhere. You saw videos on Facebook, you saw it on other social media. Heroes, heroes, heroes. And because of one incident, all of a sudden, I don't want to say the whole country, because I think you have more support than you know. They're just afraid to speak up because of what will happen if they speak up. But I believe because of one person, that scenario of being a hero got reversed, and now you're being vilified, and it's unjustly. Just like there's bad doctors, there's bad mechanics, there's bad landscapers. There's bad in every profession. They need to be weeded out in every profession, and not everybody is a racist. Some people are just jerks. They're jerks to everybody. All right? So just because they're a jerk to somebody of the opposite color doesn't mean they're not a jerk to somebody else the same color. So I wish people wouldn't judge and jump to conclusions right away, because quite frankly, a person could just be a jerk and it has nothing to do with racism. But unfortunately, that's what we're hearing all the time, and that's what people will jump to conclusion-wise. But that's all I have to say. I still think you guys are heroes, and you're out there on the front lines every day, and you're well-trained, and you guys love what you do, or else you wouldn't be doing it. And it's unfortunate. There's a lot of officers that love what they're doing, but they're leaving because they cannot face what's happening right now, and I don't blame them. So, you got my support, Chief. That's all I gotta say.
Can I make a comment?
Sure.
Okay. I've lived in 8 different cities. I've worked in urban communities in LA and in New York. And I will say, as I tell everyone, that the way police departments are run are not the same everywhere. I have seen things that shouldn't be happening in police departments happen in the town I grew up in the area I grew up in, where police didn't come when they were called. And this is the only place that I've felt actually safe. And I appreciate Chief Palmer and the efforts to be part of the community, the response to, the initiative the department took to go into schools after a school shooting happened. You guys went in there. I was very grateful because my children are students at our community schools, and the officers were there engaging with them. So there's a lot of positive things that are happening in our police department, but I just want to emphasize that that's not the case nationwide. It should be, but it's not something that's happening. So I appreciate what this department's doing. I don't see a negative outlook on police generally. I think there's a surge of questioning, and in some places I think it's warranted. But we have answers that hopefully are the ones that people will look to as an example for other communities. So thank you.
Anyone else? Chairman Hart, do you have anything else for your committee?
I do. All right. With the, thank you so much, Chief. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Chief.
You have our support. The with the resignation of Chief Hoffman, we have an issue before us as to whether to move forward with the recruitment of a full-time ambulance chief. So would someone like to make a motion?
Motion?
Motion
I'll
by
second.
Councilwoman McManaman, seconded by Councilwoman Baumgartner. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say no. There are 6 ayes.
That's all I have, President. Our next meeting is, my screen went to sleep.
July 13th, Mr. Hart.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, General Administration Committee. We purchased a new street sweeper, and we have our old one to sell, and Fountain Hill is purchasing it from us, and we need a motion to sell the street sweeper to Fountain Hill for $10,000. So would somebody like to make the motion? Councilman Anders, seconded by Councilman Hart. Any discussion on that? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. There are 6 ayes. Our next meeting is this Thursday at 9 a.m. By Zoom. Budget and Finance Committee, in the absence of Chairman Dufresne, I will fill in. We have Resolution 2020-24, the bill list. The bill list was a total of $1,026,730.05. Would somebody like to make a motion to approve the bill list? Councilman Hart, seconded by
Make a motion, Mr.
Councilman
President.
Elliott. Any questions on the bill list? All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say no. There are 6 ayes. You have significant revenue, expenses, and revenue. Then you have Resolution 2020-22. We are rebidding 10 and 33 East Minor Street, formerly the Rodale buildings. And the resolution says, a resolution authorizing the sale of 33 East Minor Street and 10 East Minor Street in the Burley, Mass. Would somebody like to make a motion to approve the resolution? Councilman Balliet, seconded by Councilman Anders. Discussion?
Yeah, I would
Yeah,
like
so-
to,
Make some comments on what's in the actual resolution and what we're asking. And
yeah, absolutely. First and foremost, I do want to make mention that we met in an executive session prior to the council meeting to discuss this property as well as a personnel matter. But in particular, the reason why we're rebidding this is because the Pennsylvania Borough Code requires that a property, from the time that you accept the bid through the time that the property is completely closed and you receive payment, is 60 days. And unfortunately, 7 Generations Charter School was unable to meet that 60 days because of a banking issue that was due to the COVID virus and then the timing. Despite the attempt to try to extend the deadline, our borough solicitor and their solicitors both felt that was in violation of Pennsylvania Borough Code, and we could not extend the deadline. So we are forced to declare them in default of the agreement. We are forced by law to put it back out the bid. And so what we did in the resolution was we said that we would not accept a bid lower than $3.4 million because that's the bid that they put in last time. They have indicated very clearly that they are going to rebid, and there's a possibility that some other investors may bid as well. But the law is very clear in the Pennsylvania Borough Code that if you don't close within the 60 days, we can't extend it. We have to put it back out the bid. So what this resolution is doing is authorizing us to put the building back out the bid.
all right, any questions?
Mr. Solicitor, does that capture what we wanted to say?
Yes, it does, Mr. Pepe. That is exactly what has happened. And they were unable, because of various circumstances, including the virus, to have complied with the law, and there was no other alternative.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say no. There are 6 ayes. Our next meeting is at 11 a.m. this Thursday by Zoom. Community Relations Planning and Development Committee Chairwoman McManaman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Nothing for official action this evening. You do have committee meeting notes from our June meeting. A couple items of note. We're continuing on the website update. That's going very well. And we are working on an outline for a long-range marketing plan. Just something of note, the visioning committee will be on hold for the time being. We'll be hearing from them regarding the moving ahead with that, with those meetings. Our next meeting is July 13th at 4:30, and unless anyone has any questions, I will report progress.
All right, hearing none, we'll move to Junior Council Member Jonas for your report.
So as mentioned earlier, I presented on the tree project.
Jonas, can you speak a little louder? It sounds distant.
Oh, okay.
Much better, much better.
Okay, good, good. I just need to move my mic. So as I presented earlier, I talked to about my tree project. I presented the outline of what I was doing. I presented what I thought my budget was, and I received a lot of suggestions from that. And one of the main suggestions was moving out the project until next fall in order to obtain especially grant money, because it's a lengthy process that I need to do. And some of these funding options were the Tree City Grant, the Penn State Extension, the Garden Community, and the Rotary Group. And those were all suggested by those who were at the presentation. And then Doug Hall actually reached out to me personally and told me about Tree Pennsylvania, and they are giving away trees this fall. So those are all options that I have in terms of funding, and those are all ones that I'm going to, that might take a while. So I'm going to have to push the project out. And I'm going to rewrite the information about the GoFundMe to reflect this, as well as to depict a more accurate picture of where this project is coming from, because there was confusion that this project was from the actual borough itself. But I'm now rephrasing it so it accurately reflects that it is from me personally as a citizen of Emmaus. And as for Emmaus itself, classes closed last Thursday, and as for SATs, those have been open for students for signups again. The new SATs will be available August 26th. And with that, I've heard progress.
Thank you. You have various boards and commission meeting minutes and notes. Personal appeals part 2. We will have Shane unmute our guests, and if anyone has a public appeal, please state your name and where you're from, and you have 5 minutes for your appeal.
Well, the good news is, thanks to the chief's 23 minutes and 42 seconds, the group that did come into this meeting and did try to raid the meeting left. So everybody that's been here has endured the whole thing. So I'm pretty sure we don't have any unwanted visitors. So everybody's
All right,
unmuted.
so if you unmute them, and we'll see if there's any appeals.
Yep. So I got nothing.
All right.
Hold on.
Hearing none, we will move to the borough manager's report.
Yeah, let me mute everybody again quick. Okay. So I think just a couple things. First of all, Chief, thank you for that explanation. But secondly, you didn't have a whole lot of things to vote on because I think we're working on a lot of big projects right now and a number of ordinances that are in the works. So over the course of the next month or so, you'll start seeing those. We did, and we have started to put together a financial analysis of what the impacts of the pandemic have been. And I did explain those at the Budget and Finance Committee the other day, and just kind of at a very far level, I want to say that we've made about $1 million in cuts and savings. You know, we've hit deep into our departments, we've hit deep into our budgets, and to date, I want to say that our negative financial impact is approximately $400,000 and climbing from the pandemic. And we won't truly see the kind of the finals of that. I think it's going to be something that goes on for quite some time. You know, the wage taxes, you know, they're expecting about a 20% hit for the year on $1.75 million. So you do that, you do those numbers, and that's $300 and some thousand just in itself. You know, the loss in permits, the loss in fees, the loss in a lot of other things. Ambulance revenue, call volumes down 60%. You know, the financial impact from ambulance calls to date is $128,000. So those numbers are deep. They're hard hit numbers. But what made me feel better, I think, about the whole thing is when we started putting the numbers on paper. I do think we've done enough. I think our departments have done enough. I think that our staff has done enough. I think our council has done enough to, I don't want to say be comfortable, but I do want to say to get us through this year, at least at this point. You know, God willing, nothing else severely goes wrong here. But at this point in this, you know, at this stage in the game, I think we've done what we needed to do, and the numbers that we're looking at so far, I think we've done enough to get through. So the conversation, you know, as I promised at the last council meeting, has turned to recovery, opening. You know, our public works full-time staff is back. Our full-time clerical staff will be returning. At least the rest of them will be returning at the beginning of July. When we turn, you know, green phase, you know, town hall and our other buildings will be open to the public once we turn green. And some of our other operations will be picking back up. We'll be making decisions on things like the second ambulance. We'll be making decisions on services that we're providing. We have opened up more for the compost site. We've also started doing some other things, and we're starting back into, you know, our operations that we've severely cut. There are still other things that obviously aren't going to happen this year. We've talked about those. There are some other things though that we still do have plans on trying to accomplish and trying to do, and we're talking about those in the committee level. I think one thing that I do appreciate, and you should appreciate, is the transparency that we've shown throughout this. You know, we've been in public meetings with people in the public there watching, and the numbers are shared on the screen. So, you know, we've been as open as we can possibly be throughout this process. And I think that's important because I think we're trying to, you know, share with the community what's really going on here. And I think most of the people in the community understand it. And I think people understand that we're doing what we're fiscally need to do to make sure that we're not doing what municipalities are just finally starting to realize right now, and that's, oh crap, we didn't do anything, maybe we should start. Instead, we got out in front of this, and I think we did enough. You know, we're going to keep doing our due diligence. We're going to keep paying attention. And if we have to cut more, you know, we're going to look at it. So, any questions for me? Okay. Progress.
Thank you, Shane. Under President's business, all I want to do is mention that we did did have an executive session for personnel and real estate issues for an hour previous to our meeting. So just to state that for the record. And with that, is there a motion to adjourn? Councilman Andrews, seconded by Councilwoman Baumgartner. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. There are 6 ayes. Meeting adjourned at 8:28. Council members, if you stick around to see if the press has any questions.